So, you know, it's always better to be the godfather of things than the father of things. And that's pretty much the way I feel about this whole concept of T-shaped talent or T-shaped people. I'm going to give you, if I can, does this work? Yeah? If I click this, something happens. There you go. Something really did happen. I'm going to do this rather quickly to kind of give you a historical perspective of what I was thinking about when I concluded that we needed to do this. Now, you could have all been concluding differently at a different point in time and doing it in your own way. This is what I was doing about 15 or 20 years ago in IBM, thinking about why is it time for us to think differently about the talent we're bringing into the IBM company. One of the reasons, of course, is that the IBM company of today, or even 10 or 15 years ago, is a highly professional, talented organization. We have very few factory workers. There are very few laborers, per se, left in the IBM company. Salary workers, you get the picture, right? When I started with IBM over 50 years ago, it was a company of nearly 420,000 people. Half of them were salary workers. Half of them were salaried workers. When I left IBM, we were a company of 420,000 people. Almost none of them were salaried workers. None of them were hourly workers. All of them were salary workers. And more importantly, all of them were professional, quote unquote, in some way, shape, or manner. So this bothered me. It didn't seem to bother a lot of other people in IBM, but it bothered me. Perhaps because of how old I am and how long I was there and what I saw through the transition of IBM. I also realized full well that it wasn't as easy as it once was to make a nickel in this industry. It was all about innovation. It was all about whether or not anyone cared about what you had to say. How relevant were you to the conversation? And in order to kind of get our bona fides, if you will, in this arena, we did something that maybe Sam Palmisano will never forgive me for, but we stood up and we led for the Council on Competitiveness, the NII, the National Innovation Initiative. I don't know if you remember that. I don't know if you saw that, use it. It's still on their website. You can still get it and download it. It's called the NII. I think it happens to be a wonderful piece of work, given I led it for IBM. But it wasn't just me. 45 other organizations participated, other companies, NGOs, academic institutions, and government agencies. It kind of confirmed what I was thinking, that it's harder. You know, it's no longer simply a technologically driven environment. You just can't throw it on the wall and see what sticks and go from there. It doesn't work that way anymore. It can work, but it's not going to work for a company as big as IBM. By the way, Sam Palmisano is the CEO and the chairman through this phase of IBM. The other thing that happened is I was asked to be a commissioner on the future of higher education in this country by Secretary Spellings. And we took a year to understand what was going on in higher education. And the report, which you can still get from the Department of Education's website, called A Test of Leadership, I absolutely love that little clip there. Government and institutional policies created during a different era are impeding the expansion of models designed to meet the nation's workforce needs. We did this work in 2005, 2006. And while some movement has occurred, this is probably still, unfortunately, a true statement. So it's harder to make money. The company is changing. The whole complexion and environment for IBM is changing. The skill base is something you have to question whether or not it really is relevant, to what we're doing. And from that, we started to draw some, that's when I started to actually get deeply worried and started to talk to not only myself on this topic, that's supposed to be a joke, by the way, but Jim. I started to talk more seriously with Jim and my colleagues here at Almaden. You know, so we had this mental image of ourselves as physical scientists, even actually life scientists in IBM. We were smart enough to see the major shifts that are going on. The question was whether we were going to be smart enough to see the shift going on in social sciences as well. And that's certainly not my bona fide. That's certainly not my background, but people like Jim kind of held my feet to the fire as we said, this too needs to become something important to the IBM company, even more so as you thought about the constant shifting of value in the marketplace. Not only is innovation harder to come by, value shifts away from hardware, shifts from software, shifts away from software, shifts to services, it just shifts. It just kind of moves, and you don't control it. You don't control it. And then you go look and study all of that, and you find out this has been going on since God was young. This value migration has been going on since God was young. You look at employment numbers, you look at GDP numbers, you see, you know, what? In this country 200 years ago, what percentage of the people were farmers? What percentage? 90%, thank you very much. You look at 2012, what percentage of people in this country are farmers? Less than 5%, thank you very much. I mean, what happened there? Are you eating less, by the way? Are you enjoying your food less? Have you rejected your food? Of course not. You understand what's going on. We're producing much more food, it's just that we don't want to pay for it. We don't have time to do it ourselves. And therefore, it becomes more productive, almost by, you know, force of economy, if you will, and force of market. Same thing goes on in the goods sector. So I started to realize this. Jim kept pointing these things up to me, you know, in his very, you know, thoughtful, scholarly fashion. And then when that failed, he just started to beat me mercilessly to make me understand that things were really changing faster than anyone thought. And that value was quickly migrating. Jobs were quickly migrating. GDP was quickly migrating into the services sector, a sector that we were in, and a sector I questioned whether we were well prepared to continue to support and service. It's all about talent. We know the age-old adage, that talent goes up and down in the elevator every day, and it can one day decide to go down and not go up. It can go out. So how do you prepare yourself? How do you prepare you who help us by putting the talent together that we need to understand what's really going on? That's where the idea T-shaped came from. That's what I was thinking when I finally coined this phrase with the help of Jim and others in research. They get as much, if not more, credit. I was just a mouthpiece. You know, I won't even say the pretty mouthpiece. I was just a mouthpiece, you know, up there uttering what we were deeply, deeply concerned with. I haven't seen this go away, my friends. I mean, we're making progress, but the needs are still there. The reality of life says, if you want, somebody asked her in the earlier panel, how do you know whether you're making progress or not? You know, most innovators are T-shaped people, for goodness sakes. There's lots of studies that have been done. I mean, the National Academy is doing one, Educate to Innovate, for one, that suggests that the more T-shaped you are, the more likely you are to be in it. Being a Renaissance person is a good thing now, not a bad thing. And the degree to which we can help accelerate that, I mean, it's really why I'm here. The problems of the world are bigger, they're not smaller. So, Jim made this point. They don't end. They're not siloed up. They don't stop here anymore. I mean, these are just a few of the problems of the world. I mean, you've got to be a little from another planet if you don't think there's such thing as contagion, if you don't think that things really are connected one to the other. They are, and therefore the problems are much more complicated. You've got to be innovative. Somebody was remarking about collaboration. We saw all of that in the NII. We preached that inside IBM. We changed IBM to be a collaborative organization. We changed IBM to be an open organization. They were not. They're just not naturally built that way. So I hear you. You've got organizations that are rigid. You've got organizations that are recalcitrant. I hear it. Nothing was more rigid, nothing was more recalcitrant than the IBM company, or is more rigid or recalcitrant than the IBM company. They remain rigid and recalcitrant. You listening, Ginny? She probably is, by the way, and I'll never see you again. But that's perfectly fine with me. I don't care. I'm getting my licks in. I'm almost done. That's what happens when you've been away for 5 years. Graduations are very liberating. Martin's taking the notes for her. I can see him right now. He's texting her, or he's same-timing her. Yeah, I see what's going on over there. I get that. So it was all about change. That's what possessed me to kind of think, we have got to move. We got to move quicker. We were the leader. We can continue to be the leader, but only if we move faster. Technology's changing, the problem set's changing, the talent pool's changing. Everything is changing all at the same time. And I'll leave you with a simple little thought, you know, kind of implanted in me maybe 60 years ago by my beloved, God rest his soul, father, which kind of told me how to go forward. It was very simple. It's pretty, I mean, my father was, God rest his soul, didn't even graduate high school, first generation American, typical immigrant story. Typical immigrant story. No, his name was Nicholas Joseph Donofrio. We had no seconds in our family and no juniors. He never believed in that. Very straightforward. Very straightforward. Drove me crazy with that. Drove me and my life with that. And I'm telling you, that's kind of what's going on now. So if you're happy doing what you're doing and the results that you've got, then you should just leave now. If, on the other hand, you're not, then you really have to stop doing what you're doing and start doing something else, because all you're going to get is what you've been getting. Thank you very much.